Okay, we're good.
Oh, it's a long week.
Aren't they all? They blend together. All right, thank you so much, everyone, for showing up. Just to give a brief history of what we're trying to accomplish today. All of these projects came from all the different departments for projects that, or items that were greater than $25,000. As part of any borrowing process that we might do in the future, we need to show that we've thought about these projects in the past and had some sort of plan. So each year I put out a report through this committee highlighting in the past 10 to 15 projects that we thought were important, just to highlight. But the mere fact that the projects are on the list is the most important thing. So sometimes these projects are imminent, some of them are far off in the future, but it always helps to have them on the list. So we can go through the list line by line, picking projects. I would talk about from a department standpoint. I think this year, more than any other, given the amount of money coming from federal and state government, I think there's a chance that we're going to be able to act on a lot of these. So,
Well, then why don't we just do them department by department?
Yeah,
rather than
certainly.
Do we know yet have we gotten any guidance from the feds, or if they're distributing it through the state on the infrastructure funding?
so I believe there's multiple answers to that. Different programs are going through different means. I think we talked yesterday about the tip list going through the MPO. So those will be projects that we submit to them for consideration. There's another group of money that's going to be coming directly to us, but maybe the mayor can speak.
Yeah, a lot of it will be done through, the money for the infrastructure bill is coming through the state instead of directly from the federal government to the city.
I thought that might be the case.
A lot of it will be done through the MPOs, the planning associations, or planning organizations, something like that.
Yep.
It's where we put the tip list through for the different road construction projects.
Did you say MPO?
Yes.
What's that again?
Metropolitan Planning Organization,
Okay.
which is a function of MRPC.
Yes.
It's a Regional Planning Commission. A lot of acronyms there.
Well, I know, that's why I need to have these refreshed.
A lot of it will be done through competitive grant programs, both at the state and federal level, if we can show that a project is shovel-ready. The water and sewer money will be completely separate from all the roadway infrastructure funding that is associated with it too.
And that typically comes through the Clean Water Trust, or
Correct.
the Drinking Water Trust, which is how we typically file for state-funded projects through water and sewer. There'll just probably be a larger pot of money this time around.
And the reason I ask is that to what extent those funding sources impact these projects.
Yes.
And I don't know if we know the answer to that.
I don't think we know yet. I don't. They have started to release some grant programs that were available for these, but a lot of them that they've released so far are mainly water and sewer infrastructure.
Okay.
What I will add is for water and sewer projects through the Clean Water Trust, even though we're borrowing through them, they ask to see our capital improvement report of the prior year to see.
Check off list.
Yep.
Yeah.
So even though we're not directly borrowing on our own accord, they do ask. So it's important to have it on the list.
Having these potential uses on the capital improvement list is even more important.
Yep, and I try to stress that to the departments, if there's a thought of that project maybe having, it doesn't hurt to be on the list.
Yeah, it doesn't cost anything when you put it on.
Yep.
Now, we also don't have to stick to the fiscal year timeline there too. That's just a suggested timeline. That
Yep.
we're together, correct?
It's just helpful that the project title, or even a related title, if it's for water mains, it can just be water main construction is on there, something more generic.
Does the fact that we list it at a later date, is that likely to impact the availability of funding from these various sources?
In my experience, they've never looked at when it was put on the list, or if we've been thinking about it for 1 year or 10 years.
Okay.
That's why I think we used to go through and rate all these projects and have this pretty tedious way to go through it.
It's awful.
And I don't think it matters too much. I think just the fact that we're thinking about the project is all I think they care about.
So is the suggestion you go through these and just kind of star off which ones we think are like super important right now?
Yeah, in the past we've highlighted like 10, maybe 15 projects.
Yeah, we screened.
And I just put them in the report as the
Yeah.
bulleted projects.
Okay.
That's all. And maybe this year, we do it a little different since we know there's so many grant programs out there. Some might be a little bit more competitive than others that we can highlight, say like if it's bridges, water and sewer, at
Okay.
least on my end, so I'm aware.
Okay.
All right. My suggestion
so-
is just do each.
Yeah, so for airport, that has been there for a long time. I believe all airport projects typically go through an FAA grant procedure.
FAA and state.
Yeah,
Usually it's 5% state,
okay.
5% local.
So we've always just highlighted airport because this has been on there for probably 5 years or so at this point.
Maybe longer.
Yeah.
I mean, the building is in terrible shape.
Mhm.
Leave it on you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. They do have any upcoming projects or
Yeah.
reconstruct requests?
I can speak to the building ones. Outside the pickup truck, I don't know the backstory of that, but the traffic camera systems, those are what you'd see on Willow. I think down near Walmart has one right now, but instead of the magnetic loops in the ground, these have a camera up above, so
Union Square has that.
yeah, that's where you're right. Just a little bit more foolproof way to have the signals work and not go into that default
So
mode.
it's based on activity then?
Yep.
Yeah.
And people think their camera's looking at them, so they slow down.
Exactly, and when Dane goes through and pays, he doesn't chew all the
Yeah.
wires up and it's broken for 6 months. And
And Elm Street's had like a whole new signalization.
Elm and Pearson, I believe, was a complete
Signalization.
redo of that.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the dog
Positive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those camera systems, I think, are just simple add-ons. I believe Daryl might even be the one that installs them.
Yes.
But from a grant perspective or funding perspective, probably better to highlight Elm and Pearson given just the size of that project that we would typically go after funding in that. That one? That's okay. City Hall. The bathrooms have been on here for quite a while. They obviously need upgrades. The electrical service here, I don't know if you've been in the electric room downstairs, but it's a mishmash of different ages of equipment, and some of them are pretty old and dangerous. And I know that there's grant money coming out for municipal building infrastructure, so that might be one, or
So
Perry Hall.
would that suggest all of them?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, I mean.
I assume we're gonna put all of them in.
Yeah.
I just don't know, we can highlight all of them.
Well, if
Depends on what,
there's a separate pool of money for
Yeah.
municipal buildings, and
Yeah.
I will say, the electrical service, that is something that's actually been cited as a potential hazard for the building. So
Yeah.
on the cover page that we put in the general report that gets sent to the council, that should probably be highlighted.
that's all, I'm just trying to pick ones to float to the top.
We are gonna submit everything this will get attached to the cover sheet as well, so long as it's on this spreadsheet, it'll go through.
But as far as safety goes, probably the electrical service should be highlighted.
Yeah. The
Number one
windows.
of many number ones here.
Yes.
Yep,
Yeah.
And now the auditorium as well, Mass Development is releasing a new grant for municipally owned auditoriums.
Oh.
So that is something again we look at.
very specific.
Yes. It's done in conjunction with the cultural council.
Okay, cool.
That should be highlighted also.
Yeah, those windows over there need replacing.
It's-
We lose a lot of heat through those.
And if you're gonna pick a bathroom, go with the second.
We'll start there. Secret.
Second.
Community development.
forgot that you're being moved?
Yeah. The indoor pool demolition, that's been separated from the outdoor pool proposal, just to pull that cost out of it, given that that pool may need to come down sooner rather than later, just given the structural integrity of it.
There was an inspection done this week that did
Oh,
result
yeah.
in the right access having to be put on the building. So that did get done there too. I know that,
Looked like there are a few more roof holes in the past week or two, I noticed.
however, the expansion stuff is on hold following a business plan study that we're looking at now. I keep it on, but I wouldn't highlight it.
Okay.
And in terms of the demolition or any potential expansion or construction, I know we are looking at different EDA grants for the coverage of that stuff too. So that'd be something we'd probably look at that versus going out for loan.
Some of these I'm not too familiar with on Trevor's end. I guess I'd point out the bike path and further down, only because it's tied to funding we already have through the 140 pedestrian bridge going up to the North Central Rail Trail. This is the matching portion for the southern end of that, where the bridge lands, taking you back down to downtown and then to the hospital.
Is the dirt rear main phase 2, is that the grants?
So that is the current equity gap in
Okay.
between the contractor, what expected rents are, and the money that they're receiving from the Commonwealth. We are currently talking with DHCD on that.
Okay.
That's the equity gap that they have there, but it needs to be on the list in order for them to be able to go for more grant funding.
Okay.
MVP implementation, I think there's a lot of funding available for that. That's vulnerability preparedness. I don't know what the M is. Municipal. A lot of funding is coming for that, but that's sort of a generic term in here. We have a whole MVP report that lists out a dozen or so projects in itself.
And that's things like bridges, culverts, things like that, and any natural disasters where it would
All the different way development.
Climate resiliency is sort of space around.
Chris, do you know the rec center, Boys and Girls Club, what the city share would be on that, or why that would be city if it's Boys and Girls Club?
I don't know the funding on that side, or why Trevor put that.
I think Trevor just put that in there as a placeholder.
Okay.
I know the Boys and Girls Club is now reviewing their financial standing based off of some staffing changes that they had to review whether or not this is a feasible option for them to pursue at all. But it is something that we're looking for and seeing what we can do. But I don't think that's something that needs to be highlighted at this time.
Okay, but we'll leave it on the list for now.
Yes.
Looking over, see two individual parks, or three, I guess. Park Street Park, which is where the old substation was, right on the lake. Yep, and then as well at Bailey Brook and Mackey Park, which has some additional funding. So we have to pick something from community development that we'd like to highlight. We can do a few. There's a lot of projects here. I guess any recommendations? Mine was for the bike path, just given the funding we already have for the bridge. It'd be nice for it to land somewhere useful.
That's the Park Street parking lot, that one.
That'd be that and the bike path back on the first page. The more generic
Yeah, I think
red path along National Grid.
They go together, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So those two.
that's what I'd like, but
Is Park Street Park part of that as well?
yes.
yeah, it got pulled out, I think, because it's gonna be a phased project ultimately, but they go hand in hand. That's gonna be the continuation of the bike path to bridge, sort of from the cemetery side over to the existing,
Or
So
hospital side.
selected demolition, does it have to stay in here? Well, although we're not, it's usually CDBG block right.
Yeah, I think that's just a placeholder in there.
That's just a placeholder, that's not competitive.
If you need a ban, it would have to be on the list, so.
Yeah, that'd be it. So it's stayed, right? Yeah. Okay.
Senior Center, there's two there, kitchen upgrades, and then some accessibility upgrades.
Seems like from the nature of that, the accessibility was
Seems to be the
one.
most important one. I think they have a ramp over there right now that's aging or needs to be replaced. Yeah.
Is that a requirement, that ramp that they put in there, the middle one? Because they have the elevator, which has access to all floors, which is their handicap accessibility.
Well, you're right, they have that elevator bringing into the building, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it stops at all floors. It was a block ramp that we did.
So if that's the case, I would imagine that would be sufficient for
It means
ADA.
for ADA compliance.
Yeah.
maybe AAB, it's different, I'm not sure.
That metal wrench was put in temporarily. then
That was
they
just an
left
extra.
it.
Is that required, like it's a secondary exit for ADA? I don't know.
Not that I know. It wouldn't during the
It wouldn't help,
But
and it wouldn't help the top floor anyways.
Yeah, and they liked it, so it was just left there.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's any sort of requirement.
Yeah, maybe it's just,
I think it's just.
from a use and programming that building, they use it in,
Yeah.
maybe a little quicker throughput with the rent, and
We're also evaluating the future use of that building too as well, so I wouldn't highlight that one.
okay, yeah, we don't have to. I mean, there's no requirement for what we put on the cover pages, it's just collectively what we want to do, so we can see that. Especially if it's not a necessity. On my end,
Skip.
so dam repairs, that's sort of a generic term there for one of our 11 dams that are always in need of some work. The EPA MS4, that's the stormwater program that we have to adhere to. I had just carried money each year because the requirements for that, for compliance in that program get stricter each year. But the one I wanted to talk about today was the Mill Street Bridge. I think that's one that we should, as a city, start talking about. Each year the state comes out and does an inspection on that, and each year it gets a little bit worse. And I feel as though that's going to be the next bridge to require a closure unless we intervene in the next few years.
This isn't Walmart side, this is.
This is, yeah, going towards winter.
Portion.
Yes. Yep. The bridge is too large of a span to be covered under some of the smaller bridge grants, but there's a ton of money coming out right now for traditional bridge reconstruction or repair. So it's something I think we should really consider, given that if that one had to shut down, it sort of limits what a lot of the work that's been done on the Gardner's property over there, the S-bend, and so I think it's a sort of a critical roadway. But that's one I'm passionate about.
Yeah, so it's really kind of planning for future use of that area rather than current use.
Exactly.
Because current use isn't particularly high.
No, and I think it's used as a cut-through mainly at this
Right,
point.
at this point.
But for the development of those parcels,
Yeah.
if that bridge wasn't there, it would be
Really intended upon that, yeah.
And from what I've been seeing with the grants, it looks like if we can put the money into on the design side of it to highlight whether it's just repairs or if it's a total rehab, it goes a long ways in getting funding for the construction of it. So.
Where do we stand with respect to activity over there?
It's currently up for market.
But the Gargoose is out for market, the other property, the old S-bend,
I believe that's leased right now.
that should be closing by the end of March.
Oh, okay.
So there is more potential of something happening there sooner, certainly than the Gargoose property. And you do have a manufacturer there still.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, with a Superior.
Superior Kitchen.
Chris, should something with South Main be on the list somewhere?
So,
Whether replacement or just removal?
yeah, we can keep going at that. I think that's a low priority for the state to fund, given the northern or western abutment is on the railroad
Right.
abutment as well, so it's a little bit complicated. So, yeah, maybe it's just put on here as something to say that we're thinking about it, and when money's available for a project like that, whether it is removal.
If something falls from the sky and it's a reimbursement type thing, you
Yeah.
have to have it on here if you want to borrow.
So is that shared with the railroad? I mean, the bridge itself is very small.
It's very small, yes.
But is it
But
kind of convoluted, the ownership?
if you're looking at it from above, the bridge diverges with the railroad bridge there,
Okay.
and they share an abutment. And I know from the past, the railroad has really wanted to get rid of that grade crossing and asked, I think at some point in time, for the road closure at that point. So we need their permission to work on the bridge that they don't want there in the first place. And I think that's probably the biggest stumbling block, let alone the very quick detour around if we were trying to get competitive money from the state to repair that.
I think something should be on there, just a not
Yep.
replacement, but maybe it's removal to just having those
Yeah,
blocks.
I think that's a good idea.
And the railroad that owns it is a different company than they used to be.
Yeah.
In Western.
Okay, for fire, I don't know too much about, from a vehicle standpoint.
So from, if I could get
I
in.
know the roof over there, the first one, I know that's in dire need and it's been leaking for my lifetime in Gardner.
Decades.
Yeah,
The roof is in very bad repair over there. We did some patches on it about 10 years ago.
We did a lot of work to the gutter system that's inside and
But
patching to the roof.
we still ran into several issues with there. There are constant leaks. We just went through there because we had to do an air quality study to make sure there were no mold issues. That came back okay. But it is still something that we want to avoid
yeah,
happening. So the roof would definitely be the biggest concern there. In terms of these three vehicles that are at the top, Rescue 1 was purchased in '96, Engine 1 in '02, and Tower 1 in '97. So those are reaching the end of their useful life. However, Engine 1 will be eligible for a grant probably within the next 3 years. But if it's on this list again, those
Yep.
help us when we go for grant funding.
some of the other ones listed here seem like they're in addition to that building over there structurally, so whether it's entirely, or in addition to the headquarters, or a standalone 3-bay garage. I imagine probably like the Cumbie site.
Yes.
My recommendation for the fire would be the roof and the public safety communication equipment at Reservoir Hill, just because that building there, that will have much more contact to create, houses all of our radio systems for police, fire, dispatch, and DPW.
Yeah, yours.
I thought that came before us a couple of years ago, replaced that building.
Well, it was to take all the land, and then their plan was we're gonna work with Monty Tech to build a proper building.
Yeah.
It's a shack.
Yeah, there was some activity on it, not long ago.
But leaving the engines on there makes sense,
Yeah.
in case, well, they get a grant for engine 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For golf, I got a sort of generic request for replacement of equipment up there. I'm not entirely sure if there's new equipment that's coming right out of an enterprise account up there.
Did we just approve something for
Yeah,
the,
we just approved a couple of pieces of.
Couple of-
Okay, yeah, and this had come in a few months ago, so that may be what he was referencing at that point. So can that be pulled off?
No, I would leave it.
Or just, I guess it's generic at this point?
If they borrow something
Yep.
and pay it off over 5 years, it would need to be on here just to borrow for it, so.
Yeah, I would leave it, but I don't think it's something we need to prioritize.
Okay. For the health department, the only one or these two that I'm familiar with are the work required at the transfer station, which is bringing utilities to it as well as electric. So I think this is the shed that's there right now on that skid for the attendant that helps with directing traffic in there.
Yeah, there are no bathroom facilities there, so that's what this up.
Yep.
It says electric, there's no power into that?
No.
That's right, I noticed he had a generator over the other day.
Yeah, it's a shed with a generator and a porta potty.
Okay. So,
Or should be like that. Definitely should stay there.
for public works, a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, he's not here, he can still.
Yeah, none of them matter. Acceptance of unaccepted streets, that's been on there for a long time. I don't know, in my time here, there hasn't been an appetite to go ahead and have the city pay for some of these unaccepted roads to be brought up to city standard. But I think in the past, that had been talked about, and it's sort of been a remnant on this list.
Well, didn't the city have an issue? Is it Fredette Street where it turns into Wilkins?
Yes, that was right.
Between-
That whole section,
Yes, the midsection doesn't belong to the city.
that was done, when Bob was here. There was that, and then the discontinuance of John Street, that little piece off of Pleasant, goes down between those two families. I think that should be only two, oh, and Snake Pond Road at the time. We never
But we had,
officially accepted Snake Pond Road.
What do you call that, shared people, it was a Lane Street, the extension. That was people paid for that, their portion of it themselves.
Yeah.
It's a problem all over the city. We get calls constantly, you know, you're not taking care of my road, the road's falling apart, and we have to tell them the city doesn't own that road. We help plow, but when the road deteriorates, we're not out there repaving.
They're doing maintenance.
Yeah, so if we had a whole bunch of extra money and we could make all these roads right, that sounds nice, but maybe it's worth keeping on here. But that's sort of been the history of it.
Also, there's something that you can do with veterans.
That's what they did on Lane Street.
Yeah, that's what they do. with
Yeah,
veterans.
from time to time, people reach out about that process, and unfortunately, it seems like costs for road construction are getting to the point when you split them between 6 or 8 homes, it's too much.
20 grand.
Yeah.
Or more.
But, so that can be something to put on there. Fish Lake Cemetery. This is that old building up there that's in disrepair. It's got a generic culvert replacement. Paving is the big one. In years past, probably the last 2 or 3 years, we've highlighted it on the capital improvement report as a recommendation from the committee that we're in favor of borrowing for paving. I believe last year we had that note on there as well. Is that something we'd like to?
I think it should stay there.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's some.
Didn't they just get a street sweeper and we approved that one?
We don't run into,
Yeah, that's been paid for.
Free cash, I think so.
Yeah, it's on order now, so I think that can come up. I'll confirm with Dane that you
I'm
didn't
not
have.
sure if it was, if you wanted to replace the other one too or not.
I believe they have 2, but I think it's just that one. So I'll mention it to him. I think this might have gone on the list prior to them paying for it.
I highlighted the salt shed.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. That's gotten significantly worse in the last month as well.
Is that what you're planning for across the street?
That's the hope, to get it away from the river. Right now, and try to do it in a new site that would help with salt runoff and be able to give us the room to store for more salt for a longer term period. So we don't end up in a situation where we're panic trying to find salt and you get a week straight of little ice storms.
And you have a bad salt company.
What's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of the struggle.
Is the playground equipment just generic, or is that specific to a
I think
playground?
it's just generic. Equipment, 2A and 68, not rotary, just lights. That should
Don't
be on there. Yeah.
don't tell me about one of those rotaries. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
that should be just lights, and that probably should change that cost quite a bit. Maybe down to 500. But those lights, from what we hear from Daryl, as well as it doesn't have pedestrian crossings at all, intersections, it needs to be upgraded, and it's something that's going to happen hopefully sooner rather than later there. Uptown Rotary, I think, should remain on here. We have a bidding date of December 2022 coming up, but I don't think it hurts just to be on here until it's official and they're out there
That's
actually
Because
taking
we've already paid for the design of that,
the
right?
design is done, or we're at 100% with design. We're in the right-of-way process right now with the state.
Yeah, we just approved the taking.
The taking there. Then there'll be some private, temporary easements for people,
For
others,
constructors, yeah.
construction easements. So that's the process we're in right now. Spring 2023, they should be doing construction, so next year this should be able to come up, but we'll do it for now.
So are you saying to highlight 2A and 68 lights based on the public safety impact?
For my opinion, for public works would be 2A68 lights and the salt shed. Those are the outside of equipment that I'm not super familiar with things
And paving?
feeling towards. Paving, we have that note on there.
Okay.
but the new salt shed is, it feels like it's gonna fall down.
Drainage improvement seems to be necessary today.
Yeah, and that's a generic one for
Yeah,
Jay,
sure.
where we end up working. Wilder Field rebuild's been on there, as you know, for a long time, just because it's a pond.
Well, there'd be some real engineering for it not to be a pond.
Yeah, everything is sloping right
I
towards
mean,
it.
that's a fill,
Yeah.
that's a filled area then over there.
Yeah, so I don't know what you do there. For police, looks like maybe a little kitchen, I assume that's the galley kitchen, maybe?
Yes, so,
I'd only prioritize the radios on this one,
Yep, okay.
just so we have a consistent communication system across all of our.
Mhm.
yeah,
Well, the galley is those two rooms that we didn't finish off of the community room. One was supposed to be the radio room, the other was supposed to be the emergency operations center kitchen.
Oh, okay. Galley kitchen. For water and sewer, both enterprise accounts, but we need those items on here because we frequently borrow for these size projects, and whether it's the state or we're personally bonding for them. Still look for sewer. Sludge landfill expansion, that's probably a year away at this point from getting to the construction.
Is that-
Going through it's at the state's review period, then there'll be a state public review process. So there's still some regulatory work to be gone through, but eventually we'll be at the point where.
My understanding that the size of the expansion has been reduced, does that affect what the cost of the expansion will be?
It certainly will. It'll come down from the original, I want to say it was originally 8 acres of construction, and it shrunk maybe by a third. So we should see that come down, but I believe that's reflected in this number.
Okay.
So you say highlight that one too, Chris?
I think that's the most imminent one. For water, I'd probably go between it's tough, we're doing a lot. We have the elevated water tank interior repairs. At some point soon, that tank needs to be drained down and recoated on the inside.
oh, it's not getting painted, so.
Yeah, it got painted on the exterior, but what happens is in the wintertime, you end up getting a big ice block on the inside and it scours the inside of that
I
tank.
thought we funded something.
Well, I think that was the
It
exterior.
was the exterior.
That was just recently repainted. I don't know if it was this summer or last summer, but
I remember some talk about having it drip it to.
That would be coming up now, yeah.
I think it was last summer, because it was bid out through my
Okay.
department. So.
Yep.
So it's been recent enough for that.
Yep. But the interior is a little different, it's more of like a coating that's applied. The whole tank needs to be drained down,
Yeah.
and we need to bring in auxiliary facilities to provide water to where that area is. So it just adds to the cost as opposed to just a repainting of the inside of the tank.
Yeah.
It's a little
How
more.
old is that tank, do you know?
I think it was done mid-80s, late 80s. That tracks.
About 30.
Yeah, late 80s.
Late 80s.
At least 30, 35 years
Yeah,
old.
late 80s, maybe after that.
Oh, okay.
I'm just thinking in Westminster, we were doing the one up by the cemetery, and because of that ice block, there were parts of the metal where you could actually just poke a hole, that's how thin it was.
The rest of it else,
And the water was just
Yeah.
picking out little pinhole drops.
So we have divers that go in and do inspections.
Ooh, from,
Yeah, some super
I'll
guns.
stay here for a minute.
finger in the day.
Yeah.
So they have divers that go out and give us reports and pictures on the interior area. It's one of those things you want to get ahead of before that.
Yeah.
Before it really starts.
Yeah.
So we
It's
highlight that.
kind of like shoreline.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know that was a job.
Yeah, I think that's one to highlight.
That makes it
But the jam repairs, just the double dip from your department today.
The water department actually owns some of the road.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
What's the Crystal Lake Spillway?
So
Crystal Lake, but why is that?
I have drawings going back to the 70s of potential spillways, some way to alleviate rising water in Crystal Lake. Right now, all we have is that, you know, the leaning
Right down
tower.
Lake Street?
The leaning tower.
Right
Yeah,
down Lake
besides-
Street?
Besides downtown, it's a 20-inch pipe that goes down to a 12-inch pipe that dumps into Pond Brook. And that's not enough to control if water rose too fast. Maybe 2 years ago, it started coming up where it started coming into the substation property. So obviously, I mean, it hasn't had a major flood yet that's caused it to come over, but if we're in that situation, there's nothing we can do to stop it. And I think that's been something on somebody's mind for a long time. And with that MVP, the Climate Resiliency grant programs out there, it's an easy one to potentially fund, but it's a big project.
I was gonna say, what are the
In
plans
my,
that you looked at?
Where are you gonna spill it to?
so, in my mind, it's culverted through the golf course back to Hurley. In a large diameter pipe, you know, you'd actually, you set it at like a flood elevation, it would spill
Yeah,
over.
the elevations are such that you can do that?
Yeah. We've drawn some profiles for it, but it's a long-term, big project. It would be something that gets studied, potentially funded. It would be through federal and state grants. I think that's a big one.
That they are without,
But-
I imagine.
But there's no way right now besides opening that valve. We opened it 2 years ago and it took, I think, a week to drop 6 inches.
Yeah.
Not an
Not a
emergency.
lot of capacity.
No. Yeah, so
Okay.
So we highlighting that, or just leaving it?
that's gonna take some time.
Okay, I just,
To get to that point.
But better to leave it there than,
And you flush out Pond Brook then.
Yeah. Relying on the rainwater for that.
Yeah,
This
so
Landry's not going up that tunnel anymore.
it's just a break at the uptown rotary, that's all you need.
Yeah.
Where is, do you want to put anything about the transmission line?
Yeah, so I was gonna suggest, for water main replacement, that last one as a generic item to put on there because it covers so many water projects, that could come up like the transmission main study that we're gonna do.
Is it specific enough to satisfy the,
It's worked in the, when we did the $11 million loan 2 years ago, it was sufficient then.
because we have some reason to be hopeful that the transmission line will be covered under
The
a
infrastructure
program?
bill.
That's the hope.
as long as it's, yeah, that's it.
But I think just having that on there as a blanket term covers that.
so leave it, and no highlight or highlight?
We can have, it doesn't hurt to add one line, because I know that is something that's kind of, especially with the water and sewer money coming out from the state, something that's going to be prevalent.
Yeah, that seems like a good one to focus on.
Yeah, we're ready for it.
Yeah, so we expect plans to be ready for that end of March, maybe.
They're in the works.
Yep, maybe end of April, somewhere in that time frame where we can hopefully, if we can secure the money, get this construction season's scheduled.
And we have the right of way for, we have the rights of way for the transmission.
Yeah, that piece, so if you're on Haywood looking up the hill towards what is James Street, is still technically Haywood Street, it was never abandoned.
Right. Okay.
It's just wooded
It's
down.
right at the hill.
Yep. Schools. Do you want to speak to,
Every single one.
this is all super important.
Elementary school, good job. The school facilities garage addition, that is something that they wish for. I don't know that it's an emergency need. At Elm Street School, it still needs to be maintained as a, well, the plan is that central office and Galt is going to move into Elm Street School. So we're still going to maintain it for educational purposes, and we have to do that for at least, I feel it's another 8-10 years or something, so we're going to have to repay MSBA. So the refinished floor and paint the ceiling is the auditorium, beautiful auditorium, but that peeling paint 40 feet up in the air is taking away from it. The bathroom partitions. At least the littler kids are nicer to them, but much like Waterford, they're old and they're beat. The standby generator and electric service, we did a little bit of that work with, I think, Honeywell project. But much like City Hall, it's original 1926. The high school, there's the stair treads. There's a couple of them that are starting to go. The school is approaching 50 years old. It opened in '76. So stuff is starting to go on it now. The Landry Auditorium renovation, we're doing the seats for the prisoners, we're painting the floors, we're replacing the carpeting, we're painting the walls, but this is for the much larger, if you go in there right now, you can just hear that air ventilation system. It is loud. I think it's starting to fail, and then when you start replacing that, well, you have the drop ceiling tiles, which probably should go. Once you take that out, you have to put the acoustical things up in the ceiling, so it's a large project to take on. Watkins Field bathrooms and concessions. Watkins Field was given a temporary occupancy permit, which is now expired because we still don't have the bathrooms, and we went to the plumbing board and miraculously got a waiver to reduce the number of bathrooms that were required, so we really need to build those as soon as possible. High school exit emergency lighting and again, partitions. I'm not really sure what the exit emergency lighting is. I can check with Wayne on that. Toilet partitions, again, it's approaching 50 years old, and those tend to get beat up over the years. The high school, the 4 science labs, we've done a couple of them. We had the most recent one, I want to say that was 7 years ago. But again, the others are still original to 1976. The service equipment is again 50 years old, and that's doesn't need to be done immediately, but it's something that should be on the radar. Standby generator, same thing. The classroom unit ventilators, they're working. But like everything else, it's getting near the end of its useful life. The condensers on top of the middle school and the pitched roof at the middle school, the roof is failing. I say it's similar to the fire department roof. It's leaking, it's rusted, it's wearing thin. I don't know if there was something going on with the installers of metal roof back in the mid-90s and then the fire station mid-70s, but it's not well done. We keep submitting to the MSBA for roof repair. They got denied last year, we're submitting it this year. The athletic fields, the grass fields are grass in name only, so we're going to be doing a lot of work to that to hopefully this year to also move the high school baseball field to the high school so we can have all our facilities on one campus. There's a lot of plenary work that needs to be done to the turf itself. The irrigation system is going to be fixed this spring because that hasn't worked off and on for a little while. So when you move the varsity field up there, it needs to have the backstop moved back a little bit, some fencing included. So we had a study from Time and Bond come in, so the $630,000 is the estimate to do all the work. Facilities pickup truck, we have 4, so this would be replacing the oldest one. The intercom system in clocks is a bit of a quandary. We just had to pay Simplex or whoever they are now. I want to say it was about $5,000 because we were ringing the clocks manually, and they had to put in some new software package or something because what was there wasn't supported anymore. But much like City Hall, where they used to have the clocks that were all the same, now we have a lot of those clocks, so the 2 clocks are the same. The intercom system, Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The cameras, we're addressing some of that using some ESSER funds. Rekey the entire building, when I asked about this, over the 50 years of the high school, there's been a lot of keys made, a lot of locks changed, a lot of keys given out. So we thought it would be a good idea to
Start over?
get it under control.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Paint all interior walls, replace carpeting, and LMA solder. Hopefully that's not ours for too long, so if the city may want to worry about that, we'll just put that under neighbors stuff. And then the middle school, I don't know that the road needs to be paved, but there are some spots where it's starting to fail, and the curbing is the concrete curbing, which gets eaten up with all the amount of salt that we put down to keep everything good. So if I had to pick one out of all that, it would obviously be the Watkins Field bathrooms and concessions, simply because that is, we're living on borrowed time there.
There's some money that we just considered about.
That's for the athletic fields down below. Not
Okay.
the concessions.
Finance committee had irrigation and whatnot.
Yeah, that'll go on Tuesday before the conference.
Plans and specs still exist for the bathrooms, right?
Well,
Oh, then,
if you, this is the dumbed down number.
yeah,
The plans and specs, we're calling for a block building, so you're probably looking at 1.1 million. The facilities director believes that we can work with another engineering firm and have it more of a stick frame building.
Yep.
With, what do you call it, concrete board, or, so it would be durable, not as durable as block, but it would also be a lot cheaper.
Would the longevity be the same? Would you be investing less money to have a building that doesn't live as long?
Well, it'd be the,
So that concrete siding, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
yeah, it's the fiber cement,
Yes.
board. I think that would last.
That's pretty long lasting
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
it's not gonna last as long as block, but I don't think any of us will be around by the time they have to replace it.
Yeah. And it's more apt to get done sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
It's not an inexpensive
I'm
process.
sorry, some of us might be around. It's the great day.
Exactly.
So with just walk-ins, that gets 15, but are there other, that's 15 total that we've highlighted, are there others in the school department that need to be highlighted, or is 15 too much of a list, or
It-
it doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter, it's just gonna be the ones that get highlighted on that first or second page.
The rekeying the schools.
Yeah, I think that's a nice one, so.
Reaching is nice and small, and then Landry Auditorium, I think, is just, it's a highly used auditorium for city services, for school services, for plays, for musicals, for everything. It's our nicest and most usable.
Yeah, Williams Rockwell's funded some of the lighting and sound
Acoustic studies.
Yeah.
improvements, as I
Yeah.
recall.
That's where we got the $1.2 million number from that acoustic study that was funded, three-ish.
Yeah, it's kind of all right then.
I would also add, I think you're selling the middle school road a little short,
That's
because I think there's gonna be more activity when the new school is built.
That's what I was wondering.
You'll be coming in and out of that road more, and I think that road is pretty rough.
Just that portion from the new access road out to Captain, you say is in rough shape?
Yeah.
I think the roughest part is from the access road.
Down to school.
Yeah.
In a little
But
bit.
you're gonna be increasing the amount of traffic on that, at least that.
There's the drainage issue we have today, too.
Oh, well,
So,
because of the school, they put in those, what do you call it, silt socks. Which
Yeah, they don't-
now everything's flowed in there and it's clogged.
yeah,
So we got that working, but
yeah. Yeah, that road's pretty beat up, I don't know.
yeah. There's 3 or 4 areas that we put patch in
Yeah.
every week. Hey, I'm not gonna argue, I can throw that on the too.
So I think for next steps, I'll compile what'll be a draft report, send it out to everybody for comments, and if it's okay, we'll finalize it and submit it.
Good enough.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Look forward to the